Hi everyone. We're going to start the 14th presentation about the IMF World Bank spring meetings. And this is the honeypot, Pamela, Churchill, Harriman with top model Annabelle Nielsen, Jeffrey Epstein, and my alma mater, Cobham Hall. This one is in England. My other school is Foxcroft in Virginia, but it's the same can of worm. Foxcroft is all the robber baron heiresses, and Cobham Hall is all these aristocrats. British, European, there's the international student body as well. So those Foxcroft and Cobham, you can look at the Deep State 8, 9, 10, and 11. That covers all of these different people. Two people whose name will come up is Jenny Churchill. In this case, it's the Churchill family, and Annabelle Nielsen, who was this top model, the muse for Alexander McQueen, the fashion designer. And yeah, the dysfunctional world there. And these schools have been used as social climbing tools for the elite for several generations. And my point with them is I thought these schools were supposed to, American and British upper crust prep schools were supposed to be producing the best and the brightest, so we would have wonderful economies and societies and democracies, and everything would be wonderful. And that is not the reality of the situation, as we see time and time and time again. So we're going to, but I did, just as I was finishing the my video with this young woman, Stephanie Harlow, this morning, it was getting into, I was like, oh Lord. So we're going to first finish up, or at least listen to a part of this here, what she started, and then go into the next, her next video.
Schwab founded what is now the World Economic Forum, and that same year he published a code of ethics for business leaders, and he emphasized their responsibility to society. He said that all companies should serve all stakeholders, not just shareholders. Okay, what does that mean? Well, imagine you and your friends start a pizza shop, and you have workers who help make the pizza, you have customers who buy the pizza, and you also have people living nearby, neighbors and members of the community in which the pizza shop resides. You all care about what happens to the pizza shop and at the pizza shop. Even if you all aren't necessarily financially invested, you all want the pizza shop to do well, and also to be a positive thing for the people who own it, the people who work there, the people who shop there, the people who live near there. You are all technically then stakeholders because you all have a stake in that pizza shop in some way. And that's the idea behind stakeholder capitalism. In the old system, the only thing that would matter is making as much money for the owners. So if the pizza ingredients were cheap and the workers weren't treated well and the shop got noisy and bothered the neighbors, none of that would really matter as long as you and your friends who own the pizza shop keep putting money in your pockets. So in theory, and in a perfect world, that utopia we go back to, stakeholder capitalism, this new model, it sounds great. Everyone gets a say. Everyone is happy. We're going to make decisions for the good of everyone, not just the owners of the pizza shop. So we are going to use high quality ingredients when we make our pizzas, and we're going to pay our workers fairly and treat them well. We're going to be respectful of the neighborhood. We're still going to make money. Everyone gets what they want. Utopia abounds. World peace. No more depression, no more issues, no more crying children, no more stressed out parents. It's perfect. So here's where it gets tricky.
But see, I demonstrate that this is possible, this utopian world she's talking about, whether you use a pizza shop or a donut shop as your example, it really doesn't matter. But if you treat people well, I mean, I have shown this time and time and time and time again, whether it be when I was running a home with domestic help in Bogota or any of the places where I've been working, from the IMF with all the big wigs to the little donut shop with this one other girl, the owner, and myself. Um, you know, Same principles apply in management and mismanagement. No different. Um, what it comes down to is, are the people decent human beings? Or are they psychopaths? Are we ruled by pedophiles and psychopaths and whores and pimps? Are we ruled by upstanding people who have respect for themselves and everybody else? That's what it comes down to. And excuse me, like the podcasters, these Christian right podcasters who are covering the Charlie Kirk assassination and stuff. I mean, my favorite is Baron Coleman, who threatens to destroy Patriotic Housewife for stealing content. I call it the Marilyn Monroe phenomena, when he's hero worshiping Candace Owens or Billy and Brandy, these two young, the co-eds. He likes to have even if he's not sleeping with these girls, these guys like to have these young girls. Oh, you're so great. You're so wonderful. I mean, it's kind of normal. He's 20 years older than they are, so he knows more. I'm 20 years older than they are, and I know more as well. But the difference is, if these little girls come around me, I'm not going to be like, oh, it's just not the same dynamics. It's no fun to go and talk to an old lady who's not going to be impressed about how cute and pretty you are. Um, you know, this is why it's not a good idea. It is created a disequilibrium in disempowering the old dowager battle axes that often were a real pain in the ass. And you were like, God, that's archaic. But I've understood how these archaic institutions have their place. So anyway, we're on the same page. It's just this attitude of, well, there's nothing we can do. This is utopia, and it's ridiculous to even think that that's possible. It's not. It's no more ridiculous to think. It's more ridiculous to think we can just keep on with a bunch of psychopaths and pedophiles, and everybody's gonna just drink Kool-Aid and pass it out. No, that's that's crazy. That's more unlikely.
Employees want high pay. The customers want cheap pizza. You still want to make money, but you can't do all of those things at the same time. And when everyone gets a say, who makes the final call? The owners, the workers, the customers? Well, I guess you'd have to vote. But what if...
Also, the question is, everybody wants cheap pizza. Do you want cheap pizza? And who cares what the what the quality is? Or, do you want to eat an entire pizza that's like not very good and really, okay, maybe it satiates your hunger, but not else? Or do you want to eat a slice of pizza, the best freaking pizza you've ever eaten? Oh, I guess the pizza analogy is not quite the best one at the moment. With the Pizzagate stuff, I was just thinking of that. But anyway, that's not what, she's the one who brought up pizzas. Anyway, or, do you want a really, really, really good pizza. I have to say the best pizza I ever had was in La Rochelle in France. But anyway, um, as I say, or, quantity or quality. This is one of the problems with the Americans. It's like, my God, you get obese on this crap food, and you can't afford health care. You bitch because the health care costs are out of control. You can't afford it. Nobody goes, excuse me, if everybody was healthy, then it'd be no problem. Oh, no, 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 no. Let's just throw good money after bad instead of addressing the problem there. See, it's that mentality.
What if there were 50 owners and 20 customers and 3 employees? Then would the vote technically even still be considered a fair vote if there's an outnumbering of the stakeholders? Well, as it turns out, even in this promised utopia of stakeholder capitalism, it's still the people in charge, right? And it's still the people in charge who are making the decisions and benefiting. But if mistakes are made, if something bad happens, well, it's stakeholder capitalism. Everyone was involved in this. Who gets blamed? Who gets held accountable? That's where things get blurry, right? And the owners of the pizza shop, right, they can put up signs in their shop and they can say, we care about everyone. We care about the environment. We care about equality. We give money to causes that are important to this community. But they just put up the signs. They don't actually do anything. They don't show these claims in action. And they still choose to continue doing whatever makes them the most money. So obviously, we're talking about a little pizza shop. This doesn't even exist because it's just an example.
But see, also, they do whatever keeps on making them the most money. But what these pizza owners are not realizing at this time, their money, that they're so concentrated, fixated on the cash flow, and instead of long-term sustainability, the money that people are bringing to them is more and more worthless. So they're not actually making lots and lots of money, because they're thinking with this mentality of short-term profit, and not how much is this costing me? What are the costs here? What, yeah, in before jumping into the river. I mean, the donut shop, they just told me it's really good. It's a passion fruit sorbet, but soft serve, so it's coming out. It's not that sorbet scoop, but so it's good. But he said, "Oh, it's too expensive." I'm like, and he made a ton of it. Well, now I'm like, well, didn't you calculate that before you mixed it?
But when we talk about big business, we all want corporate responsibility. We all want these big businesses to care about the issues that matter to us. But in the end, do they really? Spoiler alert, no, in my opinion. So the Business Roundtable is a group made up of CEOs from some of the largest companies in the United States, big tech, major banks, retail giants, industrial corporations. These are the people running companies that employ millions, influence the economy, and affect everyday life for everyone. So these CEOs...
And I can assure you, all of these corporations who are taking over the food production system, feeding you shit. Ever since McDonald's, if there's a movie out there, a really good movie about how McDonald's was real food, a real hamburger, a real milkshake, was a really good company, really good producing food, when it was just this mom and pop thing, and then it went corporate and they destroyed the whole thing.
Get together and discuss economic and political issues like taxes, regulations, trade, labor policies, the list goes on. They don't make laws like the World Economic Forum, but they do advise policymakers and lobby the government, shaping how business and government interact. Remember the whole lobbying thing, because that's important. So in 2019, the Business Roundtable got together and made headlines when they released a statement saying that instead of companies existing to serve shareholders, which remember was the old model, they should now serve the stakeholders, customers, employees, suppliers, communities. This was a major endorsement of stakeholder capitalism, and these powerful CEOs, these powerful and wealthy CEOs, were doing something we hadn't really seen before. They were suddenly, turning cheek and saying, hey, there's more out there to care about than money. We care about you guys. We were like, what? Thank you. Thank you so much. Then the following year, the World Economic Forum updated the Davos Manifesto to define stakeholder capitalism for the modern era. And this would focus on ESG metrics. That means environmental, social, and governance. Klaus Schwab called it a global economy that works for progress, people, and the planet. Really catchy alliteration. Companies then started saying, trust us. We're not just making money. We're being responsible. We care. We care about emissions and sustainability. We care about diversity and the little guy. We care about ethical leadership in our governments and big businesses. And this is when you start hearing companies say things like, we prioritize diversity and inclusion. We're committed to net zero emissions. Kind of like you putting signs up in your pizza shop that you care about the community and the people who live in it, but you didn't really mean any of this, right? You were just saying it so that the community would be happy and vote your way. The community would be happy and vote your way because you said you cared. Did you mean it or were you just saying it? Did they mean it? Did these big businesses, Klaus Schwab and the economic business
sound like Trump's promises to anyone?
Roundtable and all of these hugely wealthy and powerful people who run these hugely wealthy and powerful businesses, when they came out and they said, we care about diversity and inclusion and we care about the environment, did they mean it? Or were they just...
diversity, equity, inclusion means discrimination, elimination, and intimidation. See, it's this whole PSYOP thing that they've got going on here. All of these signs. And we saw that with the TPUSA and the allegations of cult type behavior and their signs with their hands and things like that. See, this is a game that the psychopaths will play. They they think that this makes, they're playing fair. They're all con artists. Everybody's a con artist. And if you're too stupid to read between the lines and see what what the magician is doing, and if the magician can fool you, see, this is why I think Dee Dee Got a Podcast is right, that the whole Trump with the robe, that tweet that everybody flipped out over, was not Jesus Christ Trump was wearing. It was the wizard card of the tarot wizard card. So smokes and mirrors, and we can fool you. And the smart ones catch on to what's going on. It's just a matter of being smart. And the stupid idiots, well, they're gay. They're goyim. Who cares? They're trash. If they end up, dead in a ditch, that's their problem. They just weren't smart, and that's the attitude. And that's why there's these secret societies. That's how they all develop. I mean, it's not the Masonic Lodge that's the enemy. It's when you have this paradigm, whether it be the fraternities, the Masons, the trade unions, the mafia groups, they all have these secret societies because they're involved in some illegal and immoral activity, and you have to make sure that nobody's going to spill the beans. So you have initiations, and you got to make your bones to stay in the group. Skull and Bones. This is known. I always forget if that's Harvard or Yale. I think it's Yale because that's the Bush family. and the Walker. It's actually the Walker family. This gets into the first George Bush Sr. And Barbara Walker Bush. So anyway, yeah, you have these secret societies, and it's like, well, we're actually giving signs to everybody, and if they're smart, they'll read the signs and they'll be able to figure it out. Now, I'm playing the same game with them. I'm like, everybody's going to say, well, I didn't know. I'm like, excuse me, it was all posted on the internet. I keep on posting it. I keep on telling you, did you get my email? Did you see my posting? Did you see my blog? Did you see my video? Oh, no, I didn't have time. Oh, okay. Well, it's posted out there. You might want to take a look at it, because there is some information that could get you into trouble. Oh, I don't have time. Okay. I mean, my God, I think I give out at least 3 or 4 well, it's written on my names to these IMF, World Bank, people who work in the Federal Reserve. I give my little elevator speech when they come and buy my donuts or order their lunch. And oh, you really should look at my YouTube videos, because I was talking about this or that, or they don't look at it. I keep on reminding everybody, the Kennedys didn't lose the fortune in the 29 collapse because Joe Sr. listened to Shoeshine Boy instead of all the bigwig Wall Street people who were up and away. I know that story many, many, many a time. And I know many people. I was there for the 87 collapse, not only the 2008, see it a year coming before. So, this is the advantage. When you're an old lady, you've seen it come and go. That's why they want snot-nosed brats around them who will just worship the ground they walk on.
Just saying it. I mean, this new stakeholder capitalism idea just really kind of started bubbling up around that 2019, 2020 COVID time. And that's when you saw these companies start saying these things and claiming these things. And I think that even in that short amount of time, we've already seen countless examples that prove to us that they didn't mean it. They were just saying it. For example, oil and energy companies like BP and Shell, they said they were investing in renewable energy and they were committed to reducing emissions. But most of their profits still come from oil and gas, and their renewable investments are a really small percentage of their total business. This is called greenwashing, appearing to be environmentally responsible, while the core of the business remains the same, while profits still hold more importance than people and the planet. Let's look at social media companies like Meta and Google, who I think are the most egregious of this. We care about you guys. We care about people. We want everybody to be happy and have a utopic life, while in reality, they care about their bottom line, which has substantially increased. These social media companies, they say they're out there fighting misinformation, investing in diversity, and supporting mental health. Which is funny, but yes, that's what they say. In 2024, Mark Zuckerberg of Meta, Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, that weirdo, he told the Senate Judiciary Committee that there's no link between social media and negative mental health outcomes amongst young people. And to support this claim, Zuckerberg referenced the American Psychological Association's 2023 Health Advisory on Social Media Use in Adolescence study. So the APA, they were like, hell no. Mark, get our names out of your mouth. We're not doing this with you today. They responded. And they made a whole article about it. I hope I remember to link it, but they wrote a whole article about it. And they said, quote, "We agree with Zuckerberg when he said that it's important to look at the science. As psychologists, we have actually done so. And as APA's chief science officer and longtime researcher into the impact of social media on kids, I can say that Zuckerberg cherry-picked data to suit his purposes. The APA advisory, which was based on the best available science, showed that social media is related to psychological harm through online discrimination, prejudice, hate, and cyberbullying. Research also has found that young people face serious risks when they're exposed to content about self-harm, harm to others, or eating disorders. But what is key to know is that the advisory also outlined the science behind why certain features, functions, and content on social media can be harmful to young people whose brains have not yet fully developed. The potential for harm is baked into Facebook, Instagram, and other social media platforms if young people use them as intended. Counts of followers or likes exploit children's innate desire for social reward and their need to feel accepted by their peers. The endless scroll of posts.
Yeah, but we also need to start taking responsibility for the morals and values that we're teaching to our youth, and that they can't be so influenced and become victims of these psyop games. It's not just the military industrial complex who's doing that to, like, the Tyler Robinson and Lance Twiggs of the world, or Sirhan, or any of the others, even Charles Manson. That's all been proven to be. This our freaking government is behind all of this shit.
Challenges children's ability to limit their social media use and time spent on screens before brain development in neural inhibition centers have fully developed. Friending and direct messaging functions may expose minors to predators. Research also shows that ongoing engagement on social media platforms are the primary cause of youth sleep deprivation, which has substantial consequences for adolescents' mood, academic performance, and even the size and function of their brain. End quote. Now, the APA says that companies like Meta can do more to minimize harm for young people. This whole stakeholder thing that these companies and the World Economic Forum and the Davos conference, where they all, stroke themselves and talk about how important they are and how much they care about people. These companies like Meta go to these conferences and they say that they have these ideals, and they're going to make changes for the better of people and planet and all of that stuff. Progress, people, planet. So
one of the worst. I just want to go and slap this little girl across the face. It's Cara Kennedy, Carrie Kennedy's daughter, permitting SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. I want that girl in a courtroom to explain to me how the Sustainable Development Goals are supposed to be achieved in this current paradigm that she and her mother and all of the Carrie Kennedy clan want to promote. I want an explanation. She's making all of this money promoting as a propagandist. I keep on explaining to them, Axis Sally and Lord Haha, all of these propagandists, after the Third Reich fell, they faced death penalty for treason. Food for thought.
The American Psychological Association is saying these companies, they have the ability to create real change for the betterment of the people, especially young people. And they said real change requires modifying these features and functions of the social media apps themselves, and that tech developers need to prioritize the psychological health of people and children more than they prioritize making a profit from the data they extract from us. That does sound like stakeholder capitalism in action, right? Saying, hey, we as the people, the stakeholders, and the American Psychological Association, we say that this isn't good and we would like you to change it. So can you do that? Because we matter, right? Our voice and our vote matters just as much as yours. Of course it doesn't. Of course it doesn't. These companies who pretend they are all for it, who say out loud that they care about us and the issues that matter to us, it turns out they don't. They just say it and continue harming the planet and damaging people to make money, a lot of money. Companies like Meta and Google publish...
Yeah, but the same can be said about the podcasters. Anyway, I wanted to get into that economic stuff. We're going to now go into her next. This gets into, again, what kind of morals and values are you teaching, either parents to their children or educational systems to their students. So we're going to again listen to, here's the Stephanie Harlow, again, the Epstein files, Uncle Jeffrey's extensive Rothschild connections. And this, she's going to talk about the Churchill family, and Jenny Churchill went to Cobham Hall.
Nathan Rothschild Club, when he went to Bear Stearns, maybe they were just like, we like the cut of your jib, Jeffrey. You got a job here. But then there are moments we can also identify, right? Moments where the doors didn't just open for Jeffrey Epstein, they were opened for him by people who already had access to rooms most of the world will never even know exist. We ended this past Jeffrey Epstein installment by following one of those people, Lynn Forrester de Rothschild, a woman who didn't just move in elite circles, she helped define them. When we talk about all the areas of the world where money and importance exist, Lynn was there. All of them: business, finance, world politics, European royalty. And according to multiple accounts from multiple people, Lynn didn't just know Jeffrey Epstein. She brought him in. She introduced him. She was the conduit to people like Bill Clinton, Prince Andrew, Peter Mandelson, Bill Gates, and other powerful figures inside companies like Microsoft. These are connections that would go on to reshape Epstein's image and give him opportunities and access, even after everything he had done, that should have made him a pariah in these worlds, in all worlds. And when you start to look at how that happened, Lynn doesn't feel like an isolated connection. She feels like a piece of a gateway, because marrying into the Rothschild family didn't just elevate her status and give her access to European royalty and also access to banking and business. It tied Jeffrey Epstein directly or indirectly to one of the most powerful and historically influential financial dynasties in the world. And as we start pulling on that thread, it becomes clear that Lynn may not have been the beginning of Epstein's Rothschild's connections, and she certainly wasn't the end of them. So in this next installment, we're going to go deeper into those relationships, looking at other members of the Rothschild family, the introduction.
It was the Bill Barr. There's William Barr, the father and the son. The father was the head of the boarding school, East Coast boarding school, where Jeffrey Epstein taught. That's kind of, he, became buddy with, I want to say he went to Bear Stearns, I'm not positive, but that got his foot in the door to this whole network, and then it goes from there. And so William Barr, because it's the son. See, there's William Barr, his father. He's the one who was at the prison when Jeffrey Epstein was unalived, or supposedly. So, and then his father, where's his father in here? Father Donald Barr was an American educator, writer, and an Office of Strategic Services, OSS officer. He was an administrator at Columbia University before serving as headmaster of the Dalton School in New York City. Dalton School of New York City, real upper crust. It wasn't for nothing he was placed in that school as the headmaster. He wrote 2 scientific fiction novels. See, this Epstein was groomed. He was groomed to be an asset. Right, started there, and he made the right connections. My mom, she sent us to these exclusive boarding schools. She was a real social climber. Long story, she spilled the beans why we left Tucson. My father was a famous cardiologist. Why we left Tucson, and she decided she was going to destroy my father and his career. Well, she needed to make sure that she had a meal ticket someplace, and she put her money on her daughters. Unfortunately, that didn't turn out exactly as she had planned. But anyway, that was, all this money. I used to just, it infuriated me how much money was spent on our educations. And I'm like, I look at my sister and my siblings, I'm like, look at all that money wasted. Especially my younger sister, I'm like, you didn't need all that expensive education to become a cook. We learned that from mom. And bullshit. So anyway, these schools, they've been used, they were created to educate the upper crust, but they've been used as social climbing tools and places to groom your little spies.
The endorsements,
and the honeypots.
Very close friendships, and the quiet ways that Epstein was allowed to exist in spaces that honestly he had no business being in, for many reasons. We have a lot to talk about today, and it's a wild ride. We're going to have some fun with it. But before we dive in, let's have a word from the sponsor of today's video, Surfshark VPN. You know, something I think about a lot, probably more than data leaks or suspicious activity, and honestly, for me. And I think for me, it just comes down to this. When you spend your time looking at how many things go wrong for people, you start to appreciate the small things you can do to protect yourself and the people you love before anything ever happens. So if you are looking for a VPN, Surfshark is the best out there, hands down. I don't even know how much wealth. There's no way to gauge that, honestly. But before we go any further, I do want to take a moment to set the tone for this part of the discussion. We're about to talk about the Rothschild family, and I'm sure many of you already know that name comes with a lot of baggage, a lot of mystique. There are countless theories, claims, and narratives floating around online, some of them dramatic, some of them sensational, and many of them repeated so often that they start to sound like fact. We don't know what is fact and what isn't fact amongst these many theories. But for the purposes of this video, I want to be very clear about how we're approaching this. We're not here to repeat internet rumors. We are not here to make sweeping claims about hidden control or secret power structures without proof. What we are going to do is focus only on what can be documented, verified, and reasonably supported by evidence. If there were connections, we'll talk about them. If there were interactions, we will look at them. But we're going to examine those connections carefully with context and without jumping to conclusions that go beyond what the facts actually show. We follow the evidence wherever it leads, and just as importantly, we recognize where it doesn't, or at least where we can't legally prove it leads. But you know how we roll here. We'll talk about stuff. So the Rothschild family is one of the most famous and notorious financial families in modern history. Their rise from a small banking operation in 18th century Germany to a network of powerful European banks helped shape the development of modern finance, government bonds, and international banking. So the dynasty began with Mayer Amschel Rothschild, born in 1744 in Frankfurt, Germany. He built a unique international banking system by using his family, basically. He sent his 5 sons to major European financial centers, and they established banks in Frankfurt, Germany, London, England, Paris, France, Vienna, Austria, and Naples, Italy. And this obviously gave them a huge advantage over everyone else in the game at the time. This was before railroads, before telegraphs, and so the fast exchange of information could dramatically change not only who made money in finance, but a lot of other things as well. So most bankers only had reliable information about their own city. They didn't have trusted networks in these other places because it was like one bank is in Italy, one bank is in England, and those 2 banks are competitors. They don't have this open, free information sharing thing because they're not related to each other. They don't have loyalty to each other. But the Rothschild brothers trusted each other and they worked together. And using their own network of private couriers, horse relays, and coded letters, they sent news to each other about war outcomes, government debt levels, commodity prices, and political stability in each region. So this gave them all this massive amount of information about all these different areas around Europe. Now, why is that important? Because bond prices would rise and fall depending on all of those factors. So if a banker knew that a war had been won before everyone else did, they could sell before prices collapsed or buy before prices rose. So we all know about Napoleon, who rose from a general to emperor of France and conquered much of Europe before he was taken down at the Battle of Waterloo. During the wars against Napoleon, Great Britain needed money. They needed money because they needed to not only pay their troops across Europe to keep them fighting Napoleon, but they needed to fund their allies like Austria and Prussia if they had a chance of defeating Napoleon's forces. So moving gold across borders at that time was risky for multiple reasons, right? It could be lost or stolen. If there's information that, a big amount of gold is being moved in the middle of the night, then they'll just get ganged up on and the wagon that's carrying the gold will get robbed. Lots of things could happen. lots of risk being taken. So the Rothschilds stepped in to help the government using their family's network of banks in multiple countries. So Nathan in London called on his brothers in Paris, Frankfurt, Vienna, and Naples to get gold out of their banks to make the payments to everybody that needed to be paid. So in essence, their family bank could transfer funds way faster than any government could, way faster than anybody could. And the story goes that through the network of messengers and couriers, Nathan got word that Napoleon had been defeated at Waterloo a full 24 hours before the British government formally announced it. Therefore, knowing this insider information allowed him to make certain financial moves that greatly benefited the Rothschild family. Now, the Rothschilds' part in helping out Great Britain and their allies against Napoleon's devastating campaign also put the family in the good graces of the people who mattered in European politics at that time. After all of this, the Rothschild family became the most powerful banking network in Europe, and then they would go on to do a bunch of stuff, right? They were on the cutting edge of everything. They financed railways, major mining operations, infrastructure projects, and government debt. And as their wealth and power grew, so did their social status and influence. They were accepted into European high society. They were given noble titles. They were placed in aristocratic marriages close to political power and royalty. But here's the thing, marriage within the Rothschild family was very strategic. And throughout much of the 19th century, they kept it in the family, if you know what I mean. So historians estimate that more than half of Rothschild marriages in these early generations were between cousins. And this did a lot of things. This kept the wealth and financial secrets within the family. You know, you could trust these people. They were loyal to you. They were your family. It's what a lot of royal dynasties have done throughout the ages as well. But James Mayer Rothschild of the Paris family branch married his niece Betty, and their son Edmund.
It's not just the royal families who have done that. The Mormons? Oh! That's why they had so many wives. So lots of people have been doing that.
He wasn't big on banking, but he did have other interests and passions. Edmund was a Zionist and one of the most aggressive early supporters of Jewish settlement in Palestine. He funded early agricultural settlements by paying for land purchases, infrastructure, farming development. And without that support, many of those early communities would probably have collapsed because at this stage, the Zionist movement was fragile. Many early settlements were failing, and his money and backing stabilized the movement and turned small settlements into lasting communities. Tens of millions of francs were spent by Edmund for this purpose, basically building the state of Israel. And when converting what amount that is into today's money, it equals hundreds of millions of dollars, maybe even over $1 billion. Now, not all the members of the Rothschild family agreed with Edmund's Zionist beliefs and what he was doing. And as you'll come to find, this is what's going to be kind of a breaking point in the family. Not just this, but disagreements that they have over what direction they should go in, what's important to them, et cetera, et cetera. So for this reason or that reason, many of the first 5 branches of the family sort of fell off. This left the British and the French branches existing into our modern times. So for our purposes today, we're going to focus on the French branch, stemming from James in Paris. But first, I want to talk about Elie de Rothschild, who, remember, had told Les Wexner that Epstein had helped their family. Elie, who died in 2007, was the great-grandson of James, and Elie did a lot of things. He was the founder and former president of the Rothschild Bank in Zurich, Switzerland, but I want to just focus on a few things right now. So between 1996 and 2003, Elie built an offshore empire in the Cook Islands. This is a complex network of at least 20 offshore trusts and 10 front companies, and many of the trusts had opaque names like Anon Trust, Banan Trust, and Danan Trust, and those companies acted as trustees for one or more trusts, and the web was described as multi-layered and difficult to trace, but they all reportedly shared a common shareholder, Madelor Limited, based in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Now, we have to understand, this is what Epstein did too, and, we'll probably get into that eventually, but Epstein had a bunch of different trusts that didn't tie directly back to him, where he could move his money, hide his money, pay companies, get companies to pay him, and this money would sort of be not only hidden from anybody who wanted financial transparency, but also from the United States government. According to secret documents obtained by the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, in at least one instance, the lawyer setting up trusts was initially unwilling to disclose Rothschild's identity, describing him instead as the head of a wealthy and respected European family. Now, this happened when Portcullis TrustNet set up some of these trusts, and although they are normally required to have the grantor of the trust provide their full personal details and a deed of indemnity, in this instance, Portcullis arranged for the lawyer to sign for and on behalf of the grantor, which means that Elie de Rothschild didn't even have to be present, really didn't have to have anything to do with this. as far as identity-wise. Now, this was a Switzerland-based law firm, and this all came to light around 2013, so keep that timing in mind because it's going to be important later. The Swiss attorney was Peter Hefter, and his LLC was called Triton Limited in Rarotonga. This is an island somewhere in the middle of the South Pacific, the Cook Islands, by the way. So Microsoft's Nathan Myhrvold told Epstein that he was there in November of 2016. Just saying. I'm also saying the whole offshore trust concept was mirrored by Jeffrey Epstein throughout his life. So when you look at how did Jeffrey Epstein allegedly help Ellie Rothschild's family, which is what Ellie told Lex Wexner, that might make some more sense when you see new reporting that's come out in the past few weeks. Remember, we keep talking about how did Jeffrey Epstein make money? Who were his important clients? Because as far as we could tell, Les Wexner was really the only one, at least the only one we knew until recently. And then we found out about real estate tycoon Mortimer Zuckerman, who, by the way, is worth about $2.7 billion. So that's a billionaire client of Jeffrey Epstein. And according to the files, Jeffrey Epstein provided estate planning and possibly other financial services for Zuckerman, which is weird because Jeffrey Epstein was not a lawyer and he was not an accountant. So what the hell was he doing for Mortimer Zuckerman? And I think we're going to find out when we start talking about another billionaire client of Jeffrey Epstein's, which is Ariane de Rothschild, but that's going to come soon. So when you look at what could Jeffrey Epstein possibly have been doing to help Ellie de Rothschild's family, well, probably the same thing he was doing for Mortimer Zuckerman and for Ariane de Rothschild, which is, once again, really not financial planning, really not estate planning. It's more like helping them evade certain things and helping them have connections to the right people who can help them evade certain things and benefit in certain ways. It's more kind of like a mafia connection rather than a legitimate business connection. As far as I'm concerned, Jeffrey Epstein probably told these people, I'm willing to do whatever it takes for you, whatever you need. The things that your legitimate accountant won't do, the things that a legitimate lawyer won't do. I'm willing to do it or figure out how to do it or figure out somebody who can do it. Okay, so back to Ellie de Rothschild. Remember, Ellie, I know I'm saying a lot of names, but Ellie de Rothschild was the gentleman who told Les Wexner that Epstein had helped his family out a lot, which is...
Yeah. See, the thing is, we know from the Ollie North affair, there's all sorts of like black market money that needs to be moved around. And the US government has been involved, and it's not just the US government, it's all governments. They've been involved in, the trade of illegal arms and drugs. And the money they make from that goes to finance all of these subversive, snipers and contractors, what they do to get away from, so that they can't be charged in war crimes, is that they're independent contractors, military independent contractors, and they do the dirty work. And like, for example, the Ingrid Betancourt, when she was kidnapped, there were some military contractors held with her. And so, you see this all over the place because it is a backdoor of liability for the American government if these guys get involved in illegal activity, which they often do. So there's a really, really good movie with Nicolas Cage about a guy who's a money launderer, weapons trader, and he's got this beautiful, gorgeous model wife that really doesn't ask too many questions about where he makes his money. But, it's a good movie because it shows how this is a dysfunctional paradigm and bites him in the ass in the end. And it is very, very entertaining and, very action packed. That's, I have to admit, all of these people jumping off of airplanes. Oh, it's good Hollywood entertainment. What do you want? That's fine. If you guys are going to use all of your high tech stuff with the internet and produce these, Tom Cruise, Sylvester Stallone, I love those movies about, he's in that old airplane that looks like an animal or something. I forget what it is, with his ragtag group of contract army guys, green berets and whatever. But anyway, they're very amusing. But so let's go back. But that's Hollywood, and we have to be able to distinguish between Hollywood amusement and, well, yeah, in real life, this shouldn't be going on.
One of the main reasons Les Wexner decided to work with Epstein. Allie de Rothschild was married to his childhood sweetheart, Baroness Lillian Fold Springer. They got married in 1942. Lillian also came from an impressive lineage, founded by Beer Leon Fold, a wine dealer's son from Lorraine, who moved to Paris in 1784 and established another successful banking business. Lillian's sister, Helene, was actually actress Helena Bonham Carter's maternal grandmother. Anyways, Ellie and Lillian, they're very much in love, okay? Great marriage, but Ellie wasn't so much in love that he didn't fall head over heels for Pamela Churchill when he was introduced to her in 1954. Pamela Churchill was Winston Churchill's daughter-in-law. But more than that, she was his trusted confidant. They were tight. So Pamela married Winston's son, Randolph Churchill, in 1939, but reportedly, with Winston Churchill's knowledge, Pamela conducted a series of affairs during wartime London so that she could basically pillow talk with diplomats and generals, becoming Winston Churchill's secret weapon in the fight against Nazi Germany. So
come on, people. Winston Churchill is pimping out his daughter-in-law. Now, let's just go for one moment to the Churchill family tree, and I'll show you where they are. Trees. Come on, where are my trees? Churchill. Oh, maybe it's under Winston. Oh, don't tell me. It's not Winston Churchill. Sorry. Daniel Wilcox. Oh, sorry. It's under Jenny Jerome, Winston Churchill. Sorry. So here we've got Pamela Harriman there. Am I seeing? Yeah, we're seeing it there. Okay, so you got Pamela Harriman there. She was married to Randolph Churchill, Winston Churchill's son. Then he was also married to this June Osborne. Okay, so then Pamela was also married to this Leland Hayward and Averil Harriman. Randolph Churchill, his son, Winston Churchill, married this woman is Minnie Caroline Delangier. So I don't think this marriage was, I think it was a little, not very, not very highly approved of. Or was maybe this loose, as he said. See, he had several wives, so I forget which one it was. But anyway, Jenny Churchill is the one who went to Cobham Hall. So, and then her brother, Randolph, is the head. He has 4 daughters. And I guess Jenny, I don't know if Jenny, maybe she doesn't have any children. Or maybe I didn't find him. But anyway, he is the head of the Winston Churchill Institute, which is over at George Washington Library, George Washington University Library, my alma mater. So anyway, I'm like, yeah, another conference of I don't know. I haven't looked at what they talked about this year, but it's the same stuff as all of these conferences that we saw in the last video with Stephanie and about Davos and all of these different conferences. It's the same. It's the same people and the same bullshit.
ESG, remember, environmental social governance reports, saying they're focused on user safety and well-being and protecting minors. And they say they have added features like screen time reminders to help us, which is bullshit. And we all know it. We all know it because the truth is we are all addicted to our screens. And this is especially damaging when it comes to the developing brain of a child. Across the US, there are now hundreds to thousands of lawsuits against companies like Meta, TikTok, Snapchat, and YouTube. These lawsuits claim that platforms are deliberately designed to be addictive, using intentional features like infinite scroll, autoplay, and notifications engineered.
But also, what about the addictive societies we're producing? Better parenting and we wouldn't have all of these kids who are all addicted. I mean, I'm desperate for news about my sons, but I'm glad to see they're not 24/7 on the internet.
To keep users hooked. Okay? And I know I'm on YouTube. I know. But listen, I make these long videos. You have to have an attention span and some critical thinking to watch them. So if you're here, all right, we're helping. We're helping I care about people. No, I'm kidding. I really do. But I'm not making this short content that you just have to scroll through. Those are the problems. We can all admit that, even as adults, that we get on TikTok and we're scrolling, and before we know it, we're like, holy shit, 17 hours passed? What did I do with my life? Why haven't I slept? It's not good for us. And most of the time, it's all stupid. It's all stupid stuff that doesn't teach us anything or benefit us in any way. So
in my case, no. In my case, I've given my heart and soul and everything. I mean, the only thing I live for is being reunited with my sons. I mean, I go through the drudge of day after day, get up, make my videos, listen to everybody's work, go punch in the clock, make enough money to keep a roof over my head and Wi-Fi. And I mean, I've been canceled by everybody. I don't even care. All I want is to be home with my sons.
Lawsuits also claim that the companies knew young users were vulnerable and how it could lead to things like depression, eating disorders, self-harm, suicide. And these lawyers are arguing something very specific, something we've heard before. These companies designed products that hook users neurologically, similarly to how addictive substances.
Well, yeah, this is all part of the PSYOP. We saw in the last video how it's even, the whole Orwellian future is, well, we just get rid of the trash, the old people, the parasites, anybody who's not useful to us. Well, one way to get rid of people is get them all to commit suicide. Right?
Substances hook people chemically. Social media delivers repeated dopamine hits through likes, notifications, endless content. And just like the lawsuits of the past around opioids, the Sackler family would bring those back. These lawsuits are saying the same thing. The companies, Meta, all of these companies, they knew the risks, but they kept pushing the product. And why would they do that?
But what about all of the capital venture people who are giving money to these people to produce these businesses? I've been going through the capital venture companies for the past 15 years, looking at them all because I've been looking for investment money for my Global Expats project. And they say, oh, this is a great business plan, wonderful business plan. Oh, yeah, great idea. Yeah, no, we're not interested. Why? Because I'm not some cute young thing who is selling Kool-Aid and just looking to make a quick buck. That's another thing. All of these techie liberal kids, all they were interested in was producing a platform. It was get in, get out, and produce some new technology and then turn around and sell it to one of the big corporations for decades. That's what the techie liberal, and they just threw money all over the place to all of these kids. And if some good technology was produced in the process, oh, okay. I mean, I've been watching the user side of IT software, and yeah, I mean, compared to 20 years ago, my lord, lots of things have improved. So many things have improved, and less time to do the same things. But they didn't have to waste so much money. If there had been somebody at the helm of the ship, planet Earth, then a lot of money wouldn't have been wasted on bullshit, and it would have been directed. This is the problem. We've got lots of technology, you've got lots of funds, but it's just, like, somebody going out there and just throwing cash into the air, and whoever grabs it is the one who gets the investment money. That's got to stop.
Why would they do something like that when they care about us? When they care about the environment and people and, progress. Why would they do that? Well, because you may think you're the user of this technology, and you are, but you're also the product. Your attention is the product. And that is what is most important to these social media companies. You don't pay for social media apps, right? You get them for free.
Yeah.
But advertisers pay for them. And the product being sold is not only your attention, it's your behavior data. What do you watch? What do you like? What do you click on? What do you share? Algorithms are built to answer one question: what will keep this person here longer? And that often means promoting content that triggers strong emotions, feels highly personalized. Why does it feel highly personalized? Because they're getting your data. Yeah. Not just Meta, the phone that you use, Apple, Microsoft, whatever. They're collecting your data. Everything you say, the conversations you have, the things that you care about, what you're shopping for. If you use ChatGPT as
they're collecting it all. Nothing is for free. And this is all making societies more and more, these kids that can't even tie their own freaking shoes. They don't know how to deal with any unpleasantness. No, that's unpleasantness, I always hear. My God. And then they go to psychologists and psychiatrists. They all need goddamn therapists. I'm like, no, what you need is to get a life. If you actually did something, got out there and did something, you wouldn't have time to sit there thinking about, oh no, oh. Sometimes I had it, women. Sometimes I'm like, oh, little ladies, I've had it with you all.
It's a diary. It knows a lot about you, right? It's all highly personalized on social media to keep you in this infinite scroll loop. So right now there are 2 trials underway in Los Angeles and New Mexico, with countless more to come. Just like in 2024, Mark Zuckerberg is standing up there with a straight face, dying on.
But she also brought up the advertising side of the model of these social media platforms. And I mean, I explained it to my mother years ago. She's passed away, but this is how I explained to my mother, the internet, the social media platforms, and what I was trying to do. I said, Mom, it's just like with TV, when you used to have, before cable TV came in, and you had the beginning with the TV, and how you broadcasted all of these shows for free, and people could sit there in their homes and watch it. Well, how did you pay the actors? How did you make any money off of that thing? Through the advertisers. And in fact, if you look at Ronald Reagan and Nancy Reagan at the beginning, that's how he started. He was a broadcaster, and then worked for General Electric, and they got this, showroom house, and he showed all of these, home products that General Electric was producing. The new um, refrigerator, washing machines. These were new products of post World War II that all of a sudden, all of these housewives, their lives were supposed to be made very, very easy, and everybody was going to be very, very happy because they didn't have to, go and wash the clothes down at the river and then, um, cook over an old coal stove, and you had electric ovens. This was supposed to liberate the American women and American family. Well, it didn't quite work out that way because everybody was, they became fat, lazy, and stupid. But I was explaining to her that's the model. Now, as I say, if they don't become fat, lazy, and stupid, your audience or your constituency or your consumers, there's nothing wrong with advertising. There's Ian Carroll. He's developed an app, a shopping app that I highly recommend for everybody. I tried to get in on although I don't do any shopping, um, on the trials of that. But what it's supposed to do is it'll tell you all about the company, everything that you buy in the grocery store. It'll give you the whole lowdown on that company, so you can become an informed citizen. This is great. You enable and you empower. I mean, my thing is enabling and empowering my target market or families that are moving from one city to another. They're high spenders. I mean, you just need, when you move into a new home and a new city, you're going to need, depending on how far you moved, you're going to need lots of new things. But it's not yachts and drugs, and it's for families, populations that you should want to empower. So there's, as I say, it depends how your advertising model is used. Both the people who are providing the platform, financing it, running the company, and also the users. Everything can be done for positive or negative
On the Hill,
objective.
still now claiming he still agrees with his previous statements that the existing body of scientific work has not proved that social media causes mental health harms.
This is like the tobacco company.
But let's go back to that American Psychological Association article calling Mark Zuckerberg out. They end the article with, quote, "How many more times will Zuckerberg apologize before real change is made?" End quote. Well, he's not really apologizing at this point, is he? He's doubling down. But in front of Congress and grieving parents whose children have been harmed online in many different ways, Mark Zuckerberg said, quote, "It's terrible. No one should have to go through the things that your families have suffered. And this is why we invest so much and are going to continue doing industry-leading efforts to make sure that no one has to go through the things your families have had to suffer." End quote. Bullshit. Bullshit. Mark Zuckerberg doesn't care about anyone. Allegedly, in my opinion. Besides, he probably cares about his family. Maybe, I don't know, he could be a robot. It seems to me that stakeholder capitalism is some massive Potemkin village. It's something that looks good on the surface, but hides a completely different reality. And critics of this system, the stakeholder system, they agree. They say the message can be all rainbows and butterflies, while the core business model remains the same. And yet, it sucks to be lied to while companies profit off of you. But the bigger issue is that this stakeholder capitalism actually expands corporate power while sounding benevolent. The old way we did things was that the governments made the rule and then the corporations had to follow them. And then the corporations were pretty open and honest. They were like, well, we're going to do what's in the best interest of our shareholders.
Yeah, and then the TPUSA case that we've been seeing, we're seeing the same issues that she's talking about here with the corporate model, but with the nonprofit model. And in there, it's a religious group. Because it doesn't matter. They're the religious and the secular groups. It's the same bullshit, same stuff.
shareholders, the people who invest financially in our business and own, a stake of our company. They were at least upfront about not caring about us. And since these companies had the money to lobby government officials anyways, it didn't really always work out.
I mean, it really, it is so much more angering to people, whoever they may be. Somebody who is telling you, you know what, I'm fucking you over. And that's just the name of the game. And it's unfair. I know it's unfair. But you know what? It is what it is. That is so much more appreciated of, oh, you know what? This is actually for your benefit that I'm doing this. And you're the one who's going to benefit. And you give them some bullshit that like this person who's fucking you over is actually doing it for your good. That anybody with a brain gets real pissed that sees through that bullshit, and it's worse. That's why Trump got into office. They were sick and tired of the bullshit. Somebody who's honest. We don't care if he's grabbing pussy. He's honest.
Like, even though we were electing the government officials and we were hoping the government officials were making decisions for these businesses and about how they would run based on our best interests, it didn't always work because the companies, they got a lot of money and they're like, hey, lobbying. They're like, hey, maybe look the other way on this. Like, once again, we're going to talk more about it, but Monsanto and the way...
I keep on telling everybody, the lobbying business in this town became what it is today thanks to Tommy Boggs. He was the son of Congressman Hale Boggs from Louisiana, who made his bones challenging Huey Long, Governor Huey Long. Well, after Huey Long fell, he was replaced by Edwin Edwards, and Hale Boggs gets killed in an airplane accident over Alaska that I'm starting to ask myself questions now with all the killings that these people are doing, the military industrial complex. They never found the plane. They never found anything there. So his wife, like Erica Kirk, his wife became, Erica Kirk, she didn't become the congresswoman, but, same can of worms. His wife, Lindy, she became the congresswoman, the first congresswoman in Washington from Louisiana, amongst the Democrats. It's always this first of whatever. Then, of course, her kids come to Washington and have created as much problems as the Kennedy kids. I already said Tommy Boggs created the scumbag lobbying system we've got today, and his sister Cokie Roberts was over at NPR lighting fires with Gloria Steinem and all the goddamn feminists. I mean, the cancer in this city is deep and it needs to be extracted. It has been here for several generations, and the swamp needs to be drained. And Bobby Kennedy, he needs to decide where his loyalties lie. Everybody screwed him over in the 2024 campaign. I still have some faith in him. I still have some hope. He might be our Rocky, our great white hope. I don't know.
Way that they put pressure on the government and the EPA to basically say, like, hey, let's just ignore studies that say that the chemical in Roundup causes cancer, even though there's thousands and thousands of people who are suing us right now, right? And the EPA, there's evidence of this. The EPA was like, yeah, we could do that. We'll talk about it. So that old model, the shareholder model, it didn't always work out. It wasn't perfect, but all of that shit's still happening. And now Klaus Schwab and the rest of
under the watchful eye of Ethel Kennedy with her human rights organization and all of her brood of children and nieces and nephews, and Jackie O and the Capote Swans in New York. Is anybody getting the picture here?
them want everyone's hands in the pot with multi-stakeholder partnerships, which would basically bring together the private sector, which is like businesses and corporations, and then governments brought together with the private sector, and then civil society brought together with the private sector and governments, all making decisions across all areas of global governments.
That sounds wonderful on paper. I'm all for it. All for it. But clean up those three sectors before you put them together.
And once again, that sounds great, except when you look at who has the seats at the actual table where the conversations are happening.
Yeah.
It's not civil society. It's not us. They show us some like cute little like posts on YouTube. Like, look what we.
For example, National Coalition Against Domestic Violence. Well, at the international level, it's really the UN Women, but the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, they're working in there. Then we've got the Women's Linked Worldwide. They're another organization. I got all the names of all of these people and how all of these networks are working. We just need some at this point, I just don't see this being handled by DC courts. I don't know. We can do international criminal courts, the some sort of investigative grand jury. Nothing's written in stone, but some sort of investigative body needs to get their shit together and start holding everybody to account. The problem is so many people at the upper, amongst the 10% and the 1% are implicated. They're all going down. So of course, it's the what is it? There's even a word for this. Who spills the beans on who first? Good cop, bad cop. Give me the dirt. And maybe a couple of them will survive, but we're looking at something like the French Revolution, something like the revolution in Russia and China, seizure of all sorts of assets. There's all of this debt to pay off, and the people who have created it need to be held to account. So, yeah, I know what needs to be done. I'm like, holy shit, I don't see how anybody's going to do this before the entire thing turns into a bloodbath. And people are sick and tired of literally seeing people dead on the streets all over the place, not just a couple of random shootings started by the FBI and the CIA ops.
We talked about at the World Economic Forum, guys. A lot of those conversations are happening behind closed doors. A lot of those conversations, we will never know what is said. And we get a glimpse of that in the Epstein emails. And now this whole multi-stakeholder.
Well, whatever was said, all you got to do is start listening to their stupid panel discussions and reading their reports. You don't have to spy, on them. They're so stupid. They're saying it out in the
open. Kind of model that Klaus Schwab and the rest of the elites want to bring in. It's part of what the World Economic Forum calls the Great Reset. And this means quote, the government's voice would be one among many without always being the final arbiter, end quote. And that means don't worry. If your elected officials don't have a lot of power in global decision making because we're giving you, the people, more power. And it's just not true. That's just not true because in this system, corporations are promoted to being official stakeholders in global decisions, the main stakeholders, actually. It is still the people who have the most money and the most pull. And we, the people, when before we at least had a little bit of say in what happened through the officials we decided to elect to go
through again. The same thing. It was, I wanted to see Anna Bill. I think we get to
his father Seymour worked for the New York City Parks Department. His mother Pauline was a school aide. There was no evidence of inherited wealth, powerful family connections, elite social standing, nothing. Epstein attended Lafayette High School in Brooklyn. He briefly attended Cooper Union and then New York University, but he never finished. He never completed and got a degree. Despite this, his first documented professional job was teaching math and physics at the Dalton School, an elite Manhattan prep school where he was reportedly hired by Dalton's headmaster, Donald Barr, in 1967. So we've talked about this before in our previous Epstein videos from years back. We went through his whole background. If you want a refresher on that, I'll link them. But yeah, despite this, his first documented professional job was teaching math and physics.
Yeah, I mean, the question becomes is how did he meet, Donald Barr? How did he meet him and get the job offer? That's what I kind of like to know.
At the Dalton School, which was an elite Manhattan prep school where he was reportedly hired by Dalton's headmaster, Donald Barr. Now, we went through all of this in our earlier Epstein videos from years ago. If you need a refresher, I'll link everything. But yeah, it's all weird. It's all weird and all connected. Now, in 1967, Epstein left Dalton and joined investment bank Bear Stearns. Once again, without a college degree or any known experience in the finance world.
I was right. It was Bear Stearns.
Started as a junior assistant on the trading floor, and within a few years,
David Malpass. He was the president of the World Bank. He was the appointee of Trump in 2016 when Dr. Kim, Obama's appointee, stepped down early. And he was the chief economist of the Bear Stearns when there was the 2008 collapse and did not see it coming. Anyway, David Malpass is one of these people like Larry Summers who needs to be scrutinized. What's he doing around in all of this shit?
Years, he had moved into the firm's special products division, which handled complex tax strategies and wealth management for very wealthy clients. By the early 1980s, Epstein had become a limited partner at the firm, which was an unusually rapid rise for anybody, much less someone like him. But in 1981, he suddenly left Bear Stearns under unclear circumstances. Epstein then founded his own financial advisory.
If he was making a lot of money, a rise like that would be normal. And if he was a good schmoozer, he'd be getting a lot of clients. And I think probably what happened, just knowing what goes on in all of this world, is he was doing some real risky trading and had some clients that were kind of like, where is this money coming from or something, and it's kind of questionable. And that's when he's going to kind of go off the radar and become, how should I say, friends with all of these guys. He's made the contacts, but his trading is not going to be going through all of these companies, the big, through Bear Stearns. But he's still welcome in the club.
Company called J. Epstein and Company, where he claimed the firm specialized in managing money only for billionaires, and that is where Leslie Wexner entered the chat. The relationship between Leslie Wexner and Jeffrey Epstein is one of the most important and most mysterious parts of Epstein's rise to wealth and influence. Wexner was essentially Epstein's only publicly known billionaire client, and their relationship helped transform Epstein from a relatively obscure financial advisor into someone who appeared to be extraordinarily wealthy. Les Wexner built his fortune through the retail company that eventually became L Brands, which owned several major clothing chains. By the mid-1980s, the Limited had grown into a massive retail empire. Wexner had expanded this empire aggressively through acquisitions. In 1982, Wexner purchased Victoria's Secret, which later became one of the most profitable lingerie brands in the world. By the time Leslie Wexner met Jeffrey Epstein, his net worth was estimated to be around 1 to 2 billion in 1980s money. And Jeffrey Epstein was no one. He didn't have a long track record or any legitimate resume to prove he was competent in managing large fortunes. Yet, Les Wexner hired Epstein and began putting an extraordinary amount of trust in him. By the time Epstein was done with Wexner, Epstein would become the gatekeeper of Wexner's financial affairs. He had Wexner's power of attorney, and he was the owner of Wexner's massive Manhattan townhouse, the very same one that Karina Shuliak was left in Epstein's.
Apparently, Jeffrey Epstein became very adept at telling people, rich people, well, here's how to not pay taxes, tax avoidance. I mean, this is not rocket science. He learned all of these loopholes and do this, do that, do this, do that, and we could put your money here, we can put your money there. As I say, this is not rocket science, and particularly if he's with all of, these high wealth people. You need to get just a small percentage off of that stuff, and you're sitting pretty.
Will. Now, there were claims that Wexner had given the townhouse to Epstein or sold it to him for $1, but Les Wexner has always denied this and said the townhouse was sold to Epstein for what he had been told was the fair appraised value. And in the newly released files, we do see evidence that Epstein purchased that townhouse in 1998 for $20 million through a corporation. He initially paid $10 million up front and then paid the remaining installments through March of 2000. Now, in 2007, as Epstein was being accused of soliciting prostitution in Florida from teenagers, Les Wexner conducted a review of his finances. And he said this revealed that Jeffrey Epstein had stolen money from him, and from that point on, he had no contact with Epstein. Wexner said that Epstein returned a substantial amount of this money, but in light of his guilty plea and his deception, Wexner completely severed ties with Epstein. So how much money Epstein stole from Les Wexner, we have no idea, and accounts have varied over time. Initially, Wexner said that Epstein had misappropriated more than $46 million of his personal fortune. In the newly released files, there's a December 2019 DOJ memo which revealed that Wexner's attorneys had determined the theft was much larger, amounting to hundreds of millions of dollars. Representative Robert Garcia has argued that Wexner played a much larger and central role in financing Epstein, saying, quote, "There is no single person that was more involved in providing Jeffrey Epstein with the financial support to commit his crimes than Les Wexner. To be very clear, we know that approximately over $1 billion was either transferred, provided in stocks, or given directly to Mr. Epstein by Wexner," end quote. So maybe Epstein stole some money from Les Wexner. Maybe he misappropriated.
I still think that, okay, Jeffrey Epstein, he got greedy with Lex Wexner, but I still think Lex Wexner is an Israeli connection. He's another Miriam Adelson in this story that he's going to be backing, and he's going to be helping to finance Jeffrey Epstein. And then he finds out that Jeffrey Epstein's gotten a bit greedy and gets pissed off. And by then, Jeffrey Epstein, he's made all his own contacts or whatever. But I still think that Les Wexner was the Donald Barr brought Epstein into the whole, Israeli racket of spies, and Les Wexner was the finance guy.
Some of Les Wexner's funds. Les Wexner maybe gave him a bunch of money. We don't know exactly what happened between these two men, how much money was given, how much money was taken, but the greater question is, why would Les Wexner, who was a self-made billionaire by the time he met Jeffrey Epstein, who was, like I said, really nothing, Epstein was nothing, why would this billionaire give Jeffrey Epstein so much access to his money, including giving him power of attorney? Which is bananas to me. So on February 18th, 2026, Les Wexner gave a statement to the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. And he said, quote, "Let me state from the start, I was naive, foolish, and gullible to put any trust in Jeffrey Epstein. He was a con man. And while I was conned, I have done nothing wrong and have nothing to hide." End quote. Here is a clip actually from Les Wexner's deposition before the House Oversight Committee. It's very clear that Les wants us all to understand that he was duped. And it's very clear that Les Wexner's lawyer wants him to shut the hell up.
I think I'm giving you a long answer, but to understand in context, because if I just say yes or no, you won't understand it. And I really want this whole group to understand it. And I never would have guessed I was being conned. Never, ever. The deceit was so subtle. Yes, I know.
Answer the question.
Yeah, okay.
I'm sure we all appreciate the stories. We're just trying to answer the questions they actually want to be answered.
Okay. That's very helpful. Thank you. I hope it is, but I wouldn't have had the idea. But then all the things were inventoried. That wasn't work for me or Jeffrey. It was just regularly done.
Answer the question. It's okay. Answer the question.
Okay.
I will fucking kill you if you answer another question with more than 5 words, okay? I mean, the words the lawyer said to Les Wexner themselves are chilling. But what is more chilling is the calm way the attorney said them, with a friendly hand on Les Wexner's shoulder and a non-threatening smile on his face, I think not realizing the mic was going to pick up that threat. And Les Wexner just laughing it off like he's used to it. Like it's not the most bizarre, weird, disrespectful, and violent thing to say to say, I will kill you if you answer another question with more than 5 words. Now, you could say this was his lawyer protecting him, not wanting him to say things that would incriminate himself. That is probably true. Maybe it's also the lawyer not wanting Wexner to say anything that could potentially incriminate someone else or multiple someone else's. So let's examine what Wexner revealed during this testimony, because I think it gives some very serious insight into how Epstein managed to gain the access he had to Wexner. And it gives us insight into who the early players were that introduced Epstein to the world that would allow him to commit his crimes and do God knows what else at this point. We're just getting started figuring out what Epstein was doing and what he did. All right, so Les Wexner said he was introduced to Epstein in the mid to late 80s by Bob Meester, the former vice chairman of Aon. He said Bob knew that he needed help managing his personal finances and suggested that he speak to Epstein. So Bob suggested to Les Wexner that he speak to Epstein. What is Aon and who's Bob Meester? Well, Aon is the second largest insurance broker worldwide. They are ranked 300th on the Fortune 500, and they have a history of controversy regarding how they received payments from insurance companies. In the simplest terms, Aon doesn't usually sell insurance themselves. They are the middleman between companies and insurance companies, helping businesses figure out what risks they face and then arranging insurance coverage for those risks. So in theory, a broker like Aon should help a company find the best insurance deal. Right? You're working for the company. But no, they're the middleman between the company and the insurance companies. Because as we come to find out, some insurance companies were secretly paying brokers at Aon extra commissions if the broker steered clients, the businesses, towards them. These are what we call contingent commissions. And this created a conflict, obviously, because the broker might recommend the insurer that paid them the most, getting kickbacks and stuff. They might not recommend the best one for the client, because Aon's job is to look at the business, assess like what's best for them, what threats they have, what weaknesses they have, and then give them the insurance company that's best for that that analysis. That's not what was happening. So in 2004, the New York Attorney General, Eliot Spitzer, launched a major investigation into the insurance brokerage industry. He accused several large firms, including Aon, of bid rigging and steering clients to insurers that paid kickbacks, and denies wrongdoing, but ultimately agreed to pay hundreds of millions of dollars in settlements. Now, even though most people have never heard of it, Aon is extremely influential, and that's because insurance sits behind almost every major industry in the world. Without insurance, airlines can't fly, oil companies can't drill, construction projects can't start, etc., etc. You see what I'm saying? Aon helps design the financial safety nets that allow large industries to operate. So Les Wexner said Bob Meester suggested Epstein, and Bob Meester says that he suspects Epstein got befriended to him in the 1980s to get close to his billionaire friends, including Les Wexner. So in 2021, Bob Meester spoke to Vanity Fair and explained how this whole relationship came to be. He said he had met Epstein on a commercial flight to Palm Beach, and at first he was impressed with the young banker. The two, they chatted. They were like, let's meet up. They started playing racquetball together, taking steams together at the gym where they would chat. And during one of these conversations, Epstein asked Bob to introduce him to Les Wexner. Now, Bob claims that Epstein lied and said that he had gained knowledge that Wexner's current money manager was stealing from Wexner, and Epstein was like, I'm a financial bounty hunter and I can recover those stolen funds. Send me in. Send me in, coach. So Bob Meester arranged a meeting between Wexner and Epstein at Wexner's place in Aspen. Of course, you have to go to Aspen to have a business meeting. Now, how did Bob Meester come to believe that Epstein was legit or somebody he should introduce to a billionaire like Les Wexner? Who knows? He doesn't say. He just says that Epstein was a liar, and he claims that soon after he introduced Epstein to Wexner, he began to hear disturbing stories about Epstein's sexual proclivities. Bob Meester said, quote, think of whatever the worst thing anyone could do is, and Epstein did them all. End quote. Bob Meester claims the final straw came when Epstein showed up unannounced to Meester's Park Avenue apartment with 5 models, and he presented them to Bob Meester for his sexual entertainment. Meester said, quote, Epstein thought he was bringing me a gift. I told him, get the fuck out, and I never want to see you again. End quote. Bob Meester then claimed that he warned Les Wexner about Epstein. He begged Wexner, and others begged Wexner not to get too involved with Epstein, but it was too late because Wexner had already hired Epstein as his financial advisor, and he thought Epstein was brilliant and amazing and fantastic. So Les Wexner said, don't worry, it wasn't just Bob Meester whose recommendation he relied on to get involved with Jeffrey Epstein. He also said that he had consulted Ace Greenberg and Jimmy Kane of Bear Stearns, and they both endorsed Epstein without hesitation. Now, these were 2 figures who were instrumental in creating the culture of subprime mortgages that left millions of Americans with no homes, no jobs, and their life savings decimated. But as I said, that will be included in a discussion when we talk about the other things like BlackRock and the Big 3 in another installment. I wish we could just talk for hours and hours and hours because once again, everything's connected. So it's hard to not pull off the path and go down that path, but I'm trying to stay focused. Are you proud of me? I'm trying. Les Wexner also said that Epstein offered him a very respectable
They're all connected. It's all
reference, Ellie de Rothschild. Wexner said, quote, when I spoke to Ellie, he highly recommended Epstein based upon work Epstein had done for his family, end quote. Now remember, this was the 80s, but Les Wexner is not the only person who had connected the Rothschild family to Jeffrey Epstein. So it's not just like Les Wexner's over here a few months ago in 2026, and he's like, Ellie de Rothschild, and now everyone's like, oh, Epstein and the Rothschild. No, these are much deeper connections. Let's talk about Ghislaine Maxwell, right? Daughter of disgraced British media tycoon Robert Maxwell. And Ghislaine is now sitting in a minimum security prison in Texas due to her ties to Jeffrey Epstein. At least allegedly it's her sitting in the cell at this point. I don't even know. I would believe anything at this point. Now I'm going to tell you the connections between Epstein and the Rothschild family. And then we'll talk about them more in depth after introducing the players in this game. So on July 24th, 2025, Ghislaine Maxwell was interviewed by the Department of Justice. And this was basically for the reasons to see if she had information about other people connected to Epstein's crimes. The government wants to know, like, hey, are you going to talk? You've been sitting in prison for a while. Do you have anything to say? Now, during that interview, Maxwell said, quote, I know that he, Epstein, helped Lynn Forrester, who became Lynn de Rothschild. She'll deny it, and she has, but she can't, end quote. When asked what kind of help Epstein provided to Lynn Forrester, Maxwell said, quote, well, I have no idea what he did for her. I know he helped her financially. Her husband was the controller of New York, end quote. Ghislaine Maxwell is not the only person who has connected Lynn Forrester, formerly Lynn de Rothschild, to Jeffrey Epstein. In 2019, Alan Dershowitz went on News Nation and he started throwing out people's names.
There are people whose names should be disclosed. I'll give you a couple of examples. The lady Rothschild, who introduced me to Jeffrey Epstein, and we think introduced Bill Clinton to Jeffrey Epstein and maybe Prince Andrew. Her name hasn't come up at all, and yet she was as close to Jeffrey Epstein as anybody could possibly be during the period of time when he was doing some of these things. So that's a name that should be disclosed.
As we know, or should know, Alan Dershowitz was part of Jeffrey Epstein's legal team. He helped negotiate Epstein's non-prosecution agreement, the sweetheart deal, and he has been accused in civil claims related to Epstein. He's strongly denied all allegations. He has not been criminally charged with anything, and while there is definitely more to discuss when it comes to Alan Dershowitz, we can't do that right now because we're on a mission. Stay focused. All right. Dershowitz says that Lynn Forrester, Lynn de Rothschild, introduced him to Epstein. He said maybe she introduced Epstein to Bill Clinton and Prince Andrew. He said she was as close to Epstein as anyone could be. Ghislaine Maxwell has also said that it was Lynn Forrester who introduced Epstein to Prince Andrew. Maxwell said that it was a flat untruth that it was her who had introduced Epstein to Andrew or his wife, Sarah Ferguson, because people have said that. She said, no, it's Lynn Forrester who made the love match in the early 2000s between Epstein and Prince Andrew. Maxwell said, quote, she had a house or rented a house in the Vineyard. I think it was in the Vineyard or Nantucket. I invited Epstein to go, and I believe that's when he met Prince Andrew, end quote. She's talking about Martha's Vineyard when she says the Vineyard. That's how wealthy people talk about Martha's Vineyard. They call it the Vineyard. So Ghislaine Maxwell also said in this interview with law enforcement.
Anybody who doesn't know that when you talk about the Vineyard, you're talking about Martha's Vineyard. I mean, really, you shouldn't even be in this town.
She said, I don't know how Bill Clinton and Epstein met. Like, Clinton was my friend, not Epstein's friend. And she says pretty much like she didn't introduce them. So Bill Clinton was actually asked about this during his recent deposition in February of 2026.
During Ms. Maxwell's interview, she stated that President Clinton was her friend, not Epstein's friend. Is that accurate?
I'd say that it was accurate to say that I felt closer to her than to him.
And for the record, why was that?
Because I had seen her more and because she was very good friends with Evelyn Rothschild and his wife Lynn, whom I knew and was in regular touch with.
So Bill Clinton said that Lynn Forrester de Rothschild was very good friends with Ghislaine, and he knew and was in touch regularly with Lynn and her husband. We also know that Jeffrey Epstein would eventually be connected and ingrained to top players at Microsoft, not just Bill Gates, but Nathan Myhrvold and other people. And these relationships opened doors for Epstein that he normally wouldn't have even been able to knock on. Now, it looks like Jeffrey Epstein met Nathan Myhrvold in 1996 when Nathan threw a gala at the Seattle Zoo for Stephen Hawking, another name that we know is heavily involved in the Epstein files. Now, Lynn Forrester de Rothschild was an invited guest to that gala, and she brought as her plus one a Mr. Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein was seated next to Linda Stone, a former technology research executive at Microsoft, and from there, Epstein cultivated relationships with Stone, Myhrvold, Steven Sinofsky, and Reid Hoffman, all important high-up people at Microsoft who would stay in touch with him even after he left prison in 2009, even as he went through his life to his next prison sentence, and obviously through these people and, through Lynn Forrester de Rothschild, probably he's going to be introduced to Bill Gates. And Jeffrey Epstein's connections to these respected executives helped him after his, getting out of prison in 2009. They helped him return to society. They helped him have those doors opened up for him. We will talk about this more deeply in future installments, like I said. So Alan Dershowitz claims that Lynn introduced him to Epstein in Martha's Vineyard. He said, quote, "She tells me he's this fascinating guy, big donor to Harvard. He wants to meet you. I said no, but she pleaded with me, told me how important he was. She was his social pimp. Then he asked me to introduce him to people as well," end quote. So before
one of the fallacies is, Jeffrey Epstein, he's this fascinating guy. One of the biggest fallacies is that all of these upper crust, rich and famous, whether it be Cornelia Guest, Death of the Decade, or Elon Musk, or Jeff Bezos, or these are all like fascinating people. They're not. You sit down and talk with them, most of them like really superficial, don't know. They might know a lot about one subject or another, but for the most part, they're really boring and they're really arrogant.
We talk about who Lynn Forrester is and how true these claims could be. Let's see what she has had to say about these allegations. So after Dershowitz dropped Lynn Forrester de Rothschild's name on News Nation in 2019, her spokesperson told Vanity Fair that it was 100% false that Epstein had given Lynn financial help after her divorce from her second husband, Andrew Stein. 100% false. Okay, so I guess we should get some background on Lynn now. Lynn Forrester de Rothschild, born in Bergen, New Jersey. Her father, John Kenneth Forrester, was the owner and president of General Aviation Aircraft, now Meridian. She studied at Pomona College and Columbia Law School before studying international law on a Rotary Fellowship at the Geneva Graduate Institute in Switzerland. She married her first husband, Alexander Hartley Platt, great-grandson of Helen Hartley Jenkins, New York philanthropist and welfare worker, and the great-great-grandson of Marcellus Hartley, financier and philanthropist of New York. So this wedding happened in May of 1978, and who knows what went on there and how long it lasted. But in March of 1983, Lynn was tying the knot with Andrew Stein, a New York politician and son of Jerry Finkelstein, a multi-millionaire businessman who was also an extremely powerful political insider. Finkelstein created a lot of his influence through newspapers and media. He was a publisher at the New York Post. He ran the New York Daily News. In New York politics, he was known as a kingmaker. He used his media savvy and his connections to boost certain politicians, and he helped get candidates elected, including his own son, right? So at the time of their marriage, Stein had already been a member of the New York State Assembly. He'd been elected borough president of the Manhattan borough, which gave him a ton of political power and pull. And Lynn was working for the telecommunications billionaire John Kluge, who was one of the most powerful and rich businessmen in the United States at that time, ranked number one by Forbes in 1990. So Kluge built his company, Metro Media, into a huge company that owned independent television stations, radio stations, and billboards. And in the 1980s, he sold major parts of Metro Media's TV assets to New Corporation in a deal that helped the Fox Broadcasting Company get off the ground, leading to the creation of the Fox network. Now, he was married to Patricia Kluge, a British-born American socialite. After their divorce in 1990, Patricia established Kluge Estate Winery and Vineyard in Virginia. Now, the estate and winery went up for sale after the business declared bankruptcy, and they would eventually be purchased by Donald Trump and rebranded as Trump Winery. On February 10th, 2011, Epstein emailed someone named Paul Prosperi, telling him that he thought the Kluge property in Virginia was going to auction the following week, and saying they should get the details. Prosperi replied, quote, "I have heard some things about it. B of A has a note on the house and the land across the street now subdivided into lots, a few acres each, called Vineyard Estates. Farm Credit Bank has notes on winery and equipment. Trump has tried to make a deal with the lenders but didn't. He may bid. I'll find out current status," end quote. In November of 2010, Epstein was emailing with Jess Staley, who is someone important we're going to eventually talk about in great detail. But what you need to know now is that Jess Staley has been a longtime banker with JP Morgan and then Barclays. And it appears that Epstein had pulled some strings and made some calls to help Staley's daughter, Alexa, get into Columbia University. This was just the first step because Epstein would take a huge interest and help Alexa Staley a lot for years. He really did seem to have a special interest in her growth and her academic growth specifically. And listen, I'm not saying that Alexa Staley wasn't smart or didn't deserve it, but that's a conversation for another day. Anyways, in November of 2010, Jess Staley emailed Epstein saying that Alexa, his daughter, was calling Cookie Neal, director for science development at Columbia, to tell her the GRE scores. And Epstein replied, quote, "John Kluge gave $4 billion to the school. Will you relax?" End quote. Now, Kluge didn't quite give Columbia $4 billion, but he did give them over $510 million. Which is still a lot. Now, what relationship did Epstein have with John Kluge, where he felt that this amount of money donated to the school would help Jess Staley's daughter get in, right? Like, what was that of a benefit to Epstein? Did Epstein meet Lynn Forster de Rothschild through John Kluge? If so, we're talking about, in 1990, Forbes #1 richest person, okay? It's weird. It's weird. How does he know John Kluge, and how does he think that John's, financial endowments to a certain college are going to help Epstein get Jess Staley's daughter into that college? Anyway, Lynn Forster de Rothschild told the New York Times a few years back that she had met Epstein at a reception.
Yeah. There's even been documentaries about the scams that are going on and how parents are desperate to get their kids into the best colleges and buying, people to go and take tests, all sorts of stuff, getting all of these coaches that'll guarantee that their kids will get into this school or that school.
For George Mitchell, the Senate Majority Leader and Epstein's friend. Now, Mitchell served in this position from 1989 to 1995, so it's likely that this reception would have happened sometime in the mid to late 80s. So, did Epstein meet Lynn Forster de Rothschild, who introduced her to John Kluge, who she would stay close with forever, by the way. They were, even after she moved on and she did her own thing, they were very close. They had a friendship. I don't know what kind of relationship they had, but they were close, and they seemed to care about each other and respect each other a lot. So maybe she introduced Epstein to John Kluge, and that's why she's continuing to introduce him to other powerful people as she goes on along in her life and her career, like Prince Andrew. We'll see. So anyways, while Lynn Forster de Rothschild's working for John Kluge and he's creating this whole empire, this telecommunications empire, she became the VP for development at Metro Media from 1984 to 1989. And that's when she and Andrew Stein would, they'd meet, they'd get married, they'd go on to have 2 sons together, and then Lynn would build her resume and wallet steadily over the following years. She invested in telecom businesses in North America and Europe in partnership with Motorola. Between 1985 and 1995, she was the majority shareholder, chairman, and CEO of TPI Communications International in Latin America, which was owned by Motorola. In 1995, she founded FirstMark Communications in the U.S. This was a broadband wireless company, but then 2 years later, she sold her U.S. interests. And in 1998, she founded FirstMark Communications in Europe, which built fiber networks in 15 countries. So that company was sold in June of 2000 for $1 billion, the largest private equity placement in the history of the European telecommunications sector. And while she's doing all of that, Lynn Forster de Rothschild served on President Bill Clinton's National Information Infrastructure Advisory Council from 1993 to 1995, and she served on the U.S. Secretary of Energy's Advisory Committee from 1998 to 2000. Now, Lynn had donated to all of Bill and Hillary Clinton's federal races since 1992. She was very close friends with the couple, and it was right around 1993 when her then husband, Andrew Stein, ran unsuccessfully for the mayor of New York City. And this is when the marriage between Andrew Stein and Lynn seemed to end. And also right around the time that she had been appointed to a White House advisory commission by the president, Bill Clinton. So this is allegedly when people claim Epstein helped Lynn retain the millions of dollars Lynn had made through her smart business deals that would now be considered marital property and up for grabs in a divorce. A source told the New York Times that Epstein called one of Andrew Stein's lawyers and claimed that Lynn had given him the power and permission to negotiate on her behalf, and he demanded that Lynn, as the primary breadwinner, should walk away with the greater share of the assets. So maybe when Ghislaine Maxwell said Epstein helped Lynn financially, she didn't mean he gave her money during the divorce, because why would Lynn need money? She's like loaded by this point, right?
No, he helped her with the broker, the deal. And this is precisely where my big beef comes with what's going on with the family courts and how assets are being divided, etc. There are all of these broker deals. I mean, if you have lots and lots of money, I mean, I learned this. One of the lawyers that I met with, at one moment, she thought that Gonzalez, my ex-husband, was the Gonzalez, the president of the BBVA. And I mean, if it had been a cartoon, she would have had Euro signs coming out of her head. And I could just see she was going to go, oh, she was going to help me. And we were going to go after him and take him for a ride. And in fact, one of the first lawyers I met with was like, oh, we got to get a lot of money out of him. I was like, what are you talking about? I mean, I hadn't even, I was just like, I came up with the idea for this $1 billion business. I showed him the financials to my ex and I said, look, it's got $1 billion revenue potential per year. Now stop fucking with me and help me. No. That even made him more determined that I wasn't going to start it. So this is another thing, like, okay, you guys, these are the rules of the game. This is your fair trade capitalism. I wanted to start a business, and I've had to fight tooth and nail and everything, and in order to do that business, and everybody's life and assets is on the line. Well, then I get everything, right? See, you guys have been trying to work the system while I've been trying to clean it up. And I'm the one at the end who ends up with the booty. This gets into commercial law 101. The professor, he said, if you ever get in a legal battle, don't do anything illegal, because at the end of the line, it'll bite you in the ass. I'm the only one who hasn't done anything illegal here. So, this whole thing, because she was the breadwinner, so she should have gotten the bulk of the assets. It's this denigration of what the non-breadwinner is supposed to be doing. Now, unfortunately, if the roles are reversed and it's the husband who's supposed to support the wife's career and help her develop her career, they're not very good at it. They're not trained for it like wives are. So this is a huge thing. I mean, I'm like, what they're doing, it's just a transference of wealth. And I still haven't seen all of the financials from when I was married. And I'm not going to go away. I'm going to see the whole damn thing. They wanted to mess with me. This has gotten to, the principle of the matter. I don't give a shit about the money. It's probably a couple million, whatever. Oh my God. The damages that I've got against everybody, that's so much more than anything that would have been in common property assets. But this has got to stop. Women who stay at home and contribute to their husband's career or produce children for them need to have that recognized. And I keep on saying, you want to play it this way, you guys? Okay, fine. Well, guess what? When we start dividing up assets and stuff. Okay, now you got to pay her for all of the babies she's produced. Now you got to pay her for every single day that she worked for you. And the way that this has been normalized, oh no, we just go after money when we're in a divorce. And that's why women have to have their own career. This has been embraced by the right as much as the left.
Built companies, sold them. She's doing great. Maybe Ghislaine Maxwell meant that he helped.
That's another thing. If my ex-husband, who's a banker, had invested in everything I told him to invest in, we would have made a ton of money. Instead, apparently, he lost everything. And as I say, I still want to see the financials on that. It's ridiculous that I've never seen them after all of these years. That's why I went through the whole, I pushed it through with the lawyers at the end were like, what the fuck, lady? You're wasting our time and money. He says there's no money there. I'm like, no, we got to go through. You guys started this. We got to finish the process, and then we go to the international courts. They didn't understand what they were being set up for. Nobody understands what they're being set up for. They're all a bunch of assholes.
Lynn keeps some of her money. And as it turns out, as we will find, this is what Epstein has done for a few members of the Rothschild family. If that is what he did with Lynn, Forster to Rothschild, I don't know. But yeah, as it turns out, this is what he would eventually do as well for Ariane de Rothschild, who was, as of a few months ago, really the most powerful person in the Rothschild family, in the banking family. But since her ties to Epstein have come out, things have, become a little questionable. But anyways, yes, it seems like this is what he's doing. He's making deals where he's like,
if Ghislaine Maxwell is in prison, shouldn't Lynn de Rothschild be?
I can save you a lot of money, but I want some of that money. Fair enough. Okay. Now, Lynn Forster de Rothschild told the Times that she had no idea who Epstein had contacted or why he would have thought he was empowered to do anything on her behalf. That is what she's saying. That is her official statement about that, okay? Lynn also claims that she cut ties with Epstein in 2000 after he deceived her on a property transaction. And she said, quote, "I was a very small part of Epstein's life and he was a blip on mine," end quote. Now, that's not true. I just want to say, well, I don't know. I guess it's subjective, whatever. Maybe Lynn she clearly has a very big, full life. And so maybe she considers her relationship with Jeffrey Epstein to be like the small blip, but I don't know. So according to White House visitor logs, Jeffrey Epstein visited several times to the White House during the Clinton presidency.
Everybody in New York, high society, New York, London, Paris, Madrid, all of the high societies across the globe. It's fair weather friends and a very, very superficial world. You are friends with people when it is convenient to be friends, and then you distance yourself from them very, very quickly anytime they're surrounded by any unpleasantness.
Presidency, 17 times to be exact. Epstein had donated $1,000 to Clinton's campaign in 1991. Clinton took over as president on January 20th, 1993, at which point Epstein wrote another check, $10,000 this time, to the White House Historical Association. They're responsible for making it's like a private association or like a private charity, and they make, I think, improvements or whatever to the White House residents. I can't remember. I've learned so much. But either way, after that, Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell were invited to a donors reception at the White House on September 29th, 1993. There they were.
Nancy Reagan started the tradition of renovating the White House and giving these donations that wouldn't be considered donations and stuff. Wouldn't be considered bribes. As you see there, 10,000 here, 10,000 there. That's chump change. They give tips sometimes that size. And, here they get an invite to the White House. Oh, God, everybody will fall over themselves to get an invite to the White House. I want to get somebody in the frickin' White House who knows what the fuck they're doing.
Were photographed with Bill Clinton. And then between that reception and 1995, Epstein was there at least 17 more times. Now, we know that Hillary Clinton just also testified, and she was asked very directly, have you ever met Jeffrey Epstein? Because we know Bill Clinton did. And she's like, no, I have never met this man. And she could be telling the truth. But it wasn't just that Bill Clinton flew on the Lolita Express, and it wasn't just that Bill Clinton went to Epstein's Island. It was that Jeffrey Epstein, was at the White House 17 times that we know of, right? There could have been other visits that were not documented, but we know there were 17 documented times. We know that. So maybe Hillary wasn't home. Maybe she was very busy too, and she had things going on, a very big, full life, like her friend Lynn Forrester de Rothschild, or Linda Rothschild Forrester, whatever. Very big, full life. So maybe those 17 times she wasn't home, and that was specifically designed to where she wouldn't be there when Jeffrey Epstein came over. But I'm just telling you, it was a lot. So there's a letter available as part of the Clinton Library Archives that shows Lynn Forrester de Rothschild writing to Bill Clinton personally, thanking him for their talk about Jeffrey Epstein and currency stabilization. So did Jeffrey Epstein get to go to the White House because he wrote $10,000 check to Bill Clinton? Or did Lynn Forrester de Rothschild arrange some of these visits to the White House? She says no. She says she has no recollection of having anything to do with Epstein being there. But how did he get there? During this one donor dinner, did Epstein charm Bill Clinton so much that Bill Clinton was like, come over anytime, my friend, come to the White House. Just do it. We would love to have you. Maybe, I don't know, but maybe in those early days, maybe Lynn Forrester Rothschild arranged it, because we know she's writing to the president directly saying thanks for our talk about Jeffrey Epstein. What? Anyways, we will come back to the Clintons, but for now, back to Lynn Forrester, who in 2000 would become Lynn Forrester de Rothschild when she married Sir Evelyn de Rothschild in London after he divorced his previous wife that same year. Reportedly, Lynn and Rothschild were introduced by Henry Kissinger at the 1998 Bilderberg Group conference in Scotland, and the new couple were invited by the Clintons to spend their honeymoon at the White House. In 2006, Lynn was appointed as a member of the UN Advisories Group on Inclusive Financial Services. Why do all of these committees and job titles and everything, they're so long and stupid and unnecessary, and I think it's intentionally to confuse us. What does it even mean?
The longer the job title, the less power you have. That's always the same.
Advisors Group on Inclusive Financial Services. I know I'm going to look it up, and it's going to be something stupid that is absolutely, Lynn was trying to figure out how to give everybody an Apple Watch in Haiti or something like that. I'm being tongue in cheek. I'm just being funny. I'm sure it was very important work, but why do they have to be so long and complicated? And why are there so many different departments and different job titles and job roles? And it's confusing on purpose.
No, it's managerialism. They have to produce all of these jobs for all of these people with college education and do not want blue collar jobs. And so they just produce all of this bullshit because, she has this job of whatever. Now she's going to have a couple of people in her staff, and they're all going to be snot-nosed brat kids looking to get their foot in the door and put something on the resume into the political arena and international development community. And this provides the job pathway to maintain, because if they don't have a job pool for these people with all these college degrees, they're going to have rioting in the streets. All of these kids are going to be, no jobs for me? I'm supposed to go and work on a construction site? I'm real pissed. It's all about resource allocation.
So now she's the member of the UN Advisors Group on Inclusive financial services. So she leaves the White House and the private sector.
It's like Cindy McCain, Kerry Kennedy. I mean, they're just all over the place.
I guess, which would be business. And she's working for the UN now, the United Nations. But she stayed close to Bill and Hillary. She supported Hillary when Hillary ran for Democratic presidential nominee. Weirdly enough, when Hillary lost that bid in 2008 to Barack Obama, Lynn switched her support to Republican John McCain and then openly attacked Obama, who had gotten the Democratic nomination. She went ham, okay? Like in several interviews, Lynn Forrester de Rothschild went off on Obama.
I said that comment was because, to me, Barack Obama was more like the guy at the cocktail party with the leather jacket on and the cigarette, hanging out, looking down at everyone. That's my read of him, not to take anything away from his wonderful life story, his true dedication to creating the America that he believes we should be. I don't take anything away from him.
But do you think his style might be too didactic for you? Because, I mean, this is a guy who could have been a professor at the University of Chicago, a law professor, and he's a kind of professor president. So perhaps that's what you're misreading by when you say he thinks he's better than others and knows. Because, I mean, very few people really have. Who has said that? Apart from you.
Well, Harry Reid wrote a biography and talked about how Barack Obama made a very good. Harry Reid, who is the leader of the Democrats in the Senate, he wrote a biography about when Barack Obama first came to the Senate, and he made a speech, and he did a wonderful job of making everyone in the room believe that he agreed with all of them. And Harry Reid said, "You did a good job," and Obama tapped him and said, "I've got a gift."
Okay,
so he claims he's bipartisan, but
These
he picks.
people are so superficial and condescending, arrogant, and really not as bright. I mean, they get money just thrown at them anytime they sneeze. Oh, I mean, this is my favorite with Yelp. The guy who came up with that idea, it was because he got a cold and he needed to know where the pharmacy was. I was like, I had the same idea as Yelp, but it was because I moved abroad all the time and had the constantly start a new house and everything. Yeah, you get a cold, you can get 100 million. I have an idea, and my husband wants to kill me. I mean, I'm so sick and tired of all of these 10%ers and 1%ers who think they're God's gift to the world, and only because they've had money and money and money thrown at them.
People are.
And that's the reason why you don't like him. And you think McCain and Sarah Palin would have been...
Hard Talk woman, I forget what the name of this journalist, but I want to see her in court too as well. She's part of the propaganda machine.
More bipartisan than that, and that's why you back them?
Oh, everyone has...
And England, I mean, that has become more imprisoned people than Russia or China on freedom of speech issues.
Exactly.
Everyone has suffered, but Barack Obama has taken our deficit to 13.2% of GDP. Because here in Britain, you are crucifying Gordon Brown for having a 6% of GDP deficit.
Lynn continued to talk shit about Obama.
39 trillion in deficit. I'm going to take all your assets and pay it off.
For the next 4 years of his presidency. She also stayed close and talked to Hillary Clinton often via email and stuff, which is funny because when you look at it, it's like, oh, the Clintons and the Obamas, like we thought they were good with each other. Like we thought they were on the same side and they were friends. None of them are friends and all of them are friends, if that makes sense. None of them are friends and all of them are friends. They don't like each other. They don't agree with each other. They all just work towards a common goal that is not what is good for us, if that makes sense. So also in July of 2013, it looks like Epstein's assistant, Leslie Groff, good old Leslie, she sent Peter Mandelson an email with the subject, photograph from Jeffrey Epstein. And Peter replied, he was like, where was this taken? And Leslie wrote back, quote, "Hi, Peter. I'm not sure, but it might be Jeffrey's Island. I sent J.E. a note asking," end quote. Mandelson wrote back, quote, "I think it was Martha's the first time I met Jeffrey staying with Lynn Forrester, ... end quote. Leslie wrote back, your guess is probably better than mine." So, I mean, Peter Mandelson, guys, Lord Mandelson, we have so much to talk about. So we have allegations now that the Prince Andrew / Jeffrey Epstein romance was facilitated by Lynn Forrester de Rothschild. And this is pretty much an admittance from Mandelson that he met Epstein through Lynn Forrester de Rothschild. Lord Mandelson, very important person in the UK who's been getting into a lot of trouble because of his ties to Epstein. Since marrying into the Rothschild family, Lynn got even more busy than she was before. She's a chair of E.L. Rothschild, a holding company that manages investments in The Economist Group, owner of The Economist magazine, Congressional Quarterly, and The Economist Intelligence Unit. E.L. Rothschild LP, a leading independent wealth management firm in the U.S. She serves on the board of directors of Estee Lauder, The Economist Group, Bronfman, E.L. Rothschild LP, and Christie's International. She's a trustee of the Aranda Foundation, which is a Rothschild family foundation, the Outward Bound Trust, the Alfred Herrhausen Society of International Dialogue of Deutsche Bank, and the Global Commercial Microfinance Consortium Advisory Board of Deutsche Bank. Deutsche Bank, very important when we talk about Epstein too.
Oh, yeah.
So we have Lynn Forrester de Rothschild, who had connections with rich people and high up political figures, and high up political figures, not just in the United States, but overseas in the UK due to her Rothschild marriage. But she had important connections before she even married a Rothschild. And she introduced Jeffrey Epstein to all of these other people, including Peter Mandelson, who we'll talk more about later. She got his foot in the door at Microsoft, allegedly. But this is also not where Epstein's Rothschild connections end, and certainly not where they started. Because remember, Les Wexner said that it was the 1980s when L.E.D. Rothschild gave him a glowing recommendation for Epstein because of how much Epstein had helped the family. And that wasn't even the longest or closest relationship Epstein had with a Rothschild. So to unpack this, we have to really understand the Rothschild family, where they came from, how much power and wealth they have accumulated. But this is also not where Epstein's Rothschild connections end, and certainly not where they started, because remember, Les Wexner said that it was the 1980s when L.E.D. Rothschild gave him a glowing recommendation for Epstein because of how much Epstein had helped the family. And believe it or not, that wasn't even the longest or closest relationship Epstein had with a Rothschild. Definitely not the closest. And to unpack this, we really have to understand the Rothschild family, where they came from, how much power and wealth they've accumulated. And I don't want anyone to think that we're getting into weird conspiracy theories.
Okay, yeah, we already went through that. I thought this had Annabelle Hesseltine.
Or that this is going to be some...
I thought this was with Annabelle. Okay, so that's again the whole, upper crust honeypot marriages with Pamela Harriman and the Churchill family and the Rothschild family. This has been going on for a long time. And everybody's just playing the same game, and they just want to get on the same merry-go-round. I mean, Candace Owens' husband, George Farmer, he's part of this. His grandfather destroyed went bankrupt as a metals trader. And George Farmer's father was is a metals trader, and been involved in this high risk, high yield mentality that's been going on. And George Farmer should understand what I'm talking about, the problems with this whole financial system. So either you're part of the problem or you're part of the solution. Can't have it all. All of these feminists and all of these managerialists, minoritist, who think they can have it all. You can't have it all. Doesn't work like that. Okay, so that's it for today.